Welcome to my tutorial on how to crochet the interlocking crochet version of Goldilocks, my repeatable updated version. You can see I have two samples sort of started here. This one is a single repeat. This one is double, but you can see it's actually not quite double. Now, why is that? We're just going to jump right in here. That's because the windows on the edges don't get repeated. So you're just repeating this inner section, okay? That is why there's that. I'm going to go and start a brand new one. These ones, we don't need them right now, okay? We're going to start at the beginning. And you'll see also these yarn, they are thick. And this hook is an 8mm hook. And if you have that pattern in front of you, you're going to say, whoa, Ashley, that's not right. And I'm going to tell you, you're right. It's not exactly what the pattern says. Here's a little something to learn about all of my patterns, not just this one, all of them. It doesn't actually matter what size hook and yarn you use, as long as you are using two yarns that are similar, very close, as close as you can get them, and a hook size that is appropriate for that yarn. All of my patterns can be made bigger or larger simply by changing your hook and yarn. So on a video, it's easier to see the stitches when the yarn is a bit larger. So that is why today I'm using a bigger one. Now, this video is going to be on YouTube, and you'll be like, whoa, there was a YouTube live that showed this one and had some issues, and I'm going to clear it all up, okay? So this is going to be the real, actual, official video. We are going to start with colors. I'm going to use gray as my main color and yellow as my accent color. We are going to start with our foundation rows, and if you're familiar with my other patterns, you might notice that this one's written differently because it has that repeatable section like I just mentioned with these two samples, right? So you need to first decide how big you want it. Now with our chunky yarn, this is a single repeat and it's quite big already. If you're using a smaller yarn, your sample is going to be smaller. So you need to do a gauge swatch if you're concerned about how large it's going to be. If you're like me and you're just going to jump right in, you can just make it up, whatever you choose, okay? This one here is a single repeat wide. When I do this pattern for the walkthrough, I'm mostly going to be doing a single repeat wide. But I am going to do one row showing you how to count the repeats on this one, okay? But first, before we get into that, we have to start with our foundation rows. There are other tutorials, I have them, but I'm going to go over it here. First, we're going to make a slip knot. This one, I'm going to be doing a single repeat with. It says to use your main color, create repeats of 10 plus 3 windows. And you can do a chainless foundation, and that's where you just are creating each window, and then you just create another window and another window. Or if you go to step B, it says alternatively, you can chain repeats of 20 plus 9. And that's where I got into trouble on that other video, is that I had the double crochet number wrong. So we're going to double crochet into the 5th chain from our hook. That'll get us our proper count. I prefer doing the chainless. So I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's where I had confused myself. I have 6 chains for the chainless and then only 5 for the second one. So what it really tells you is that there's a lot of options you can choose. If you find this is too tight, add more, right? That sort of thing. First, we're going to do a double crochet in the first. That creates one window, right? Like this. This is actually the bottom, the side, the top. 1 chain at the bottom, 2 chains on the side counts as a double crochet. 1 chain at the top counts as our gap between the 2 double crochets. So if you wanted to do 5 or 7, 6, however big you want your window, right? Some people chain really tightly. And we always have a chain space between our double crochets. And instead of dropping down and going into a chain here, we have to actually create that bottom one. So we're going to do a treble. We yarn over twice. We'll go into this bottom hole. It was actually our very first chain. And now we have a lot of loops on the hook. So we're going to yarn over. We're going to go through 2. That creates the chain space for the bottom that you have to have chain space between each double crochet. Now we're going to yarn over and we're going to go through 1 because that's the bottom of our next double crochet. Yarn over and go through 2, that's the first part, and then the second part of our double crochet. So we have created another window. Chain, because we always need a chain between them. Now this was the skipped space, and this is the bottom of your double crochet. Yarn over and pull it through. We're going to yarn over and we're going to go through 2, that's the chain space. Yarn over, go through 1. If you want to pinch here, that's where I'm going to go back in later, right into here. So now we yarn over and go 2, yarn over, 2. We are creating windows. You can count them 10 windows. 1, 2, 3 is how many we have. That's always going to be, you start with 3 windows. Doesn't matter how many repeats you do. Now, if we're doing a single repeat, we're going to do 10 more windows. If we're doing a double repeat, we're going to do 20 windows. And you can keep going, 30, 40, 50, however wide you want your project to be. Just keep making a ton of windows, right? So first, let me just get to 10. I'm going to go a little faster here. We're going to skip ahead. This is our final window. 2 for the bottom chain that we're skipping. Then we double crochet. And that gets us 1, 2, 3 windows. Then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 more windows. If you wanted to make it wider, you're going to do 10, 10, 10, 10, 10 over and over and over again. So that's the part that gets repeated, the 10, and then you always have also an extra 3. Now we're going to put a stitch marker here if we think it's going to fall apart, or we can just make a big loop and say that's nobody's going to yank on that. It'll be okay. Now we take our accent color and we are going to, you could do a foundation where it's got windows, but I find it easier just to chain. So now we're just going to chain, and this is the same technique that you could use if you wanted to. If you don't like that window thing, you can just chain. We're going to do, it says step 2 with your accent color, chain repeats of 20 plus 7. So if you're doing those 3 windows, that's, you have to have minimum, right? 3. This is going to be 7. If this is the foundation row that you didn't want to do the windows on, and it says chain repeats of 20 plus 9, okay? So you have to read the pattern, but that's our window foundation row. This one, I'm going to do 20, 3, 4, 5, 6, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. And I could do 20 again, 20, 20, 20, 20, 40, 60, 80, right? And then we always have to add another extra 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That is the same technique that you could create these. You could just now do your windows, but you would have plus 9 if you were doing the main color. So I'm not showing that part, I just want you to be aware. So this was step 1. This is step 2. Step 3 in our foundation row is to join these together. You can see here, this is my working tail over here, and this is my working tail here. If you're left-handed, it'll be opposite. We're going to take this tail and pull it through here. And now it's laying on top. We're going to count 5 stitches, 5 chains from our hook. I like to count the back bumps because it's easier here and it looks nicer. So we've got 1 here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is the bump that we're going to go into, okay? However, he needs to be on this side of your yarn. So I'm keeping him stretched out so I know that's the one. This window is already occupied. So this is the window that he's going to be going. He's going to be joined right through there. And what we've got to do is yarn over, because we're going to be making a double crochet through the back. We're now behind the gray of this window. Grab that loop that you've stretched out and bring everything to the back. I'll make sure my yarn isn't split. There we go. And now you can do your yarn over to do a double crochet. And a chain space always between every double crochet. That is, your first window is now locked in with the other windows. You're going to do a back stitch through each of these windows and into the back bumps here. You're always going to skip one and go into the next one. Skip one, go into the next one. Skip one, go into the next one through each window. So we yarn over because we're going to be doing double crochets. Go into this window. We're skipping that chain, so this is the chain we're going to use. I'm going to put it on my hook and then I'm going to bring it to the back. Then I'm going to do my yarn over, pull the loop up, so there's 3 loops. Yarn over, pull it through 2. Yarn over, pull it through 2. And then add a chain space between your double crochets. Yarn over, go in the window. This is the stitch we just used. We're going to skip that chain. We're going to use this one. Put it on my hook, bring everything to the back. Yarn over, pull it up. Now we've got 3 loops. Yarn over, pull through 2. Yarn over, pull through 2. Chain 1 between each double crochet. So I'm going to go a little quicker now. Yeah. If you find that you have a hard time getting the chain count correct, it's always better to do extra chains because you can take them apart. That way when you get to the end you go, oh, I don't have enough chains. It's easier to just take too many out. So if you find you're having troubles with that and you're going to do a big project, I always suggest to do a couple extra chains just in case. That is our foundation rows. This is the right side of our work. The bottom is gray, the side is gray, the side is gray. Then there's this line of yellow. It goes in between the gray. And if you pulled everything proper, the yellow would also be on the top. This is the right side. The foundation rows have been completed. Now we're going to turn our work. And we're going to be working with the wrong side facing us. WS, wrong side. You can see these are sort of poking into each other. That's the wrong side. We're going to be using our main color first, which for me is gray. And this accent color tail, it says wrong side facing you, accent color to the back. I'm just going to hold it back here so that this tails get locked into the right place. We're going to start with chain 3. 1, 2, 3. And our first stitch is going to be 1B. We yarn over because we're going to be doing a double crochet. And the double crochet has to go into the next double crochet. This space is already occupied. This is the first double crochet that we're going to be going into. And we must create this double crochet behind the yellow. We want that yellow. It's not going through the yellow, it's just going behind it. But it's still going into the stitch like normal. You just happen to have the yellow in the way. Chain space between each stitch. This working tail has to be on that side for when it's his turn next. So if you get him in the wrong spot, you're going to have to undo your whole row of gray. So make sure he stays back here. The next stitch, this is where we have asterisks. It says 1B and then it has an asterisk and it starts with 7B. So you could say 8 in the back, but it matters because if you are doing repeats like this one, which is 2, we'll just turn it this way because that's the same direction as this one. We did 1 in the back and we're going to do it here. Then we'll have 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Then we'll have 1 in the front and then we'll have 2 in the back. And that's where the asterisk is, the end of the asterisk again. And then you'd start at the beginning of the asterisk is where it says 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1 in the front, 2 in the back, and then that's the end of the asterisk. So you would repeat this section over and over and over again till you get to the end. Outside of the asterisk, it then says 1B, so we did 1 in the back, and an end stitch. If you're not doing repeats, the asterisks just get in the way. They're just annoying. They don't really help you at all, but that's what they are for, the repeats. We're going to count this as 1, and then we're going to start counting at 1 again just so we can get to 7. And these are in the back, which really means you can just get that yellow out of the way as long as you don't forget which direction he's supposed to be facing later. So 1, chain again between each double crochet, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So our 7 in the back, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, plus the one that was not in the asterisk, and our end stitch, which was really a chain 3. That's what we have so far. Now we have to put these yellow ones, make sure gray is on the bottom, and then yellow, you don't want him to get tangled and twisted. You want all the windows to line up, because our next stitch, well, we have to still chain 1 between each double crochet. The next stitch goes in front of yellow. So we're entering it like a normal double crochet, but now we need to bring everything to the front before we do our yarn over and then double crochet. Usually I pull from the middle. I don't know, this skein's gonna wobble around and annoy me. Then we have 2 in the back. So this is the next window here. And that's the end of the asterisk, which you know is for the repeats. But on this one, because we're not repeating, we just keep going. The next stitch is also in the back. So it could say 3 in the back, but then you would miss out on the repeating information, right? The final end stitch, you could find the right chain. You would go, 1 chain is for skipping between them all. Then this next chain would be the top of your pretend double crochet. You can go into that space. I just use the whole window. I cheat because it's easier to find. So if you're really particular and you want to use that second chain, go for it. I just use the window. If this was all staying in the place it needs to be, this is what you just created. This is the wrong side because those lines are poking at the bottom. And if you want it to look at the right side, it looks like this. The bottom is gray, then there's yellow. The edges are gray, right? The yellow is 1 window smaller. That layer of mesh is smaller. It fits inside the gray. But we now need to do row 5, which is using our accent color, and we're still looking at the wrong side. It starts with a chain 3 in back. Now, if you had put your tails to the wrong spot, you can't change it now. You'd have to undo your row. So the in back is just a double check. You actually don't have a choice. It's already in the back. Then we're going to do 1 stitch in front. So we go into the stitch and we make sure everything stays in front of that gray. Chain 1. Now we've gotten to our asterisks. If we were paying attention to repeats, you might want to use a stitch marker. I'm just going to say 1 in the back. And then 2 in the front. Now this is also, we have brackets. We have asterisks and brackets, and I know for some of you that feels scary. The asterisks are telling you when to repeat the whole design. The brackets are telling you that this little section just happens to be repeated. So we did 1 in the back, 2 in the front. Now we have to go to the beginning of the bracket again, and we're going to do 1 in the back and 2 in the front. So we've repeated that twice. Outside of those brackets, the next stitch instruction says to be 2 stitches behind the gray. So we're going to grab our yellow and keep everything behind it for 1 and 2. We're just making those 2 double crochets are behind the gray. Then we have 2 in front. 1 and 2, and that's the end of the asterisk. So if you were doing repeats, you'd start at the beginning. We are not, so we just have 1 stitch EB end in the back. Our end stitch, yarning over, we're still doing a double crochet. We have to go behind the gray, and we're just going to bring that whole window to the back. We do our yarn over, double crochet. So this is what it looks like. You've got gray on both sides, gray on the bottom. The spikies are telling you you're looking at the wrong side. You finished row 5. You can skip ahead if you don't like this part, but I just want to show you how it works if you're doing the repeats. So I'm going to do row 5 again. Row 5, chain 3 and back, 1, 2, 3. Then we have 1 stitch in front. Then our asterisk is interrupting. And now if you are unsure of your repeats, you could put a stitch marker. I don't think I need one today, so I'm just going to keep going. The bracket says do 1 in the back, and then 2 in the front, then we're going to repeat it because it says times 2. So we're going to go 1 in the back and 2 in the front. Our next instruction says 2 in the back, then 2 in the front. Then it has the asterisk, and it doesn't tell you how many times to repeat the asterisk because I don't know how many repeats you've done. Are you repeating this twice like me? Are you repeating it 10 times? I don't know what you're creating. So that's why there's no numbers there, just an asterisk to tell you this is the repeat section, however many repeats you have created. The beginning of the asterisk section, if you're looking at row 5, it started with those brackets, 1 back, 2 in the front. So that's what we're going to do here. 1 in the back, 2 in the front. Make sure your windows are lined up. You don't want to go through the wrong window. 1 in the back. Two in the front. My yarn is definitely getting tangled here. Ooh la la. So that was the window, the brackets right there. And now we have to do 2 in the back. And 2 in the front. We have reached nearly the end of our piece, so we're done with the asterisks, and the final stitch just says end in the back. So here we go in that back window, grabbing the yellow, bringing everything to the back before we do our yarn over and finish our double crochet. So that is how it looks if you're doing 2 repeats. It's just wider than 1 repeat. These are the wrong sides. Here's the front. So you can see that we've got that kind of detail here, the bubbles, the little lines, and then it ends. And we've repeated it. The bubbles, the little lines, and then that's the end again. We're not going to do 2 repeats in this video. I'm going to toss that aside so he doesn't get so tangled in my yarn. Okay, so we're just going to do a single repeat for this video. We are now facing, the right side is facing us again. The bottom line is gray, the sides are gray. That's your main color. The inner part, the yellow, straight line here. Technically there's a straight line of gray. You can sort of see those little bumps, but it's not like the wrong side where it's definitely lines going into each other, right? So this is the right side. We are going to be working, this is row 6, so we're going to be working with the gray. the main color. And we first need to know what to do with these. It says accent color to the front. We're going to keep them here. We don't want them to get tangled around the next stitch. We want them to just be here in the front. We're going to start with chain 3. 1, 2, and 3. Technically, 2 of them count as the double crochet on the side, and 1 is the chain space that goes between each double crochet. So if you need to, you could add there. If you are the type of person who usually does 3 chains for a double crochet and you need more height, that's okay. Our first stitch is of course a double crochet. If you look here, our next double crochet has to go in this stitch, and we want these to stay here in between at the front. And it is a front stitch, so we're going to go into the stitch in front of the yellow, and we're going to keep the entire thing in front of the yellow chained between the stitches. Then we have our asterisks. If you're paying attention to the repeats, you can put your stitch marker now. Otherwise, we're just going to continue. It's got brackets. It tells us do front, back, front, back. Yarn over, making sure no yellow is in the way. Then our back stitch, we're going to bring everything to the back before we yarn over and finish our double crochet without that yellow one getting in the way. This one, you have to go in and bring everything to the front. Make sure front stitch and back stitch. Oops. Chain between every stitch. Of course, you know this because you read the key, right? Wink, wink, wink. Then we have 6 in the front. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And our final stitch outside of those asterisks is also in the front before we do our final end stitch. So you can count if you like. I'm just going to go. Now we have to do row 5. We're using our accent color. It says chain 3 in front. You don't actually have a choice. You're going to be in front or behind based on where you put those tails. If it's in the wrong spot, you have to take apart your whole gray row or cut the yarn. 1, 2, 3. It is already in the front because we had our yarn in the right spot. Now we have a long bracket, but the concept is the same. You start at the beginning of the bracket, you finish it, and when you get to the end, you just repeat it. We're going to put 1 in the back, 1 in the front, 2 in the back, and 1 in the front. Now we're going to do it again. If you have a really long blanket, you'll do it a whole bunch of times. 1 in the back, 1 in the front, 2 in the back, 1 in the front. That is the end of our brackets and also the asterisks. Our final stitch is 1 in the back, and our end stitch goes on the front. So we're going to yarn over and we're going to go into the window from the front. And that is what you've just created, rows 6 and 7. If you're not sure what row you're on, you can count your windows, your main color windows. The bottom window counts as 2, 4, 6. So really the bottom is a 0, and then this line would be 2, 4, and 6, which means the very top line that we can see right now is 7. our next row is going to be 8. This very bottom on the yellow is 1. You can count it that way too, but I just count windows. 2, 4, 6. I know my next one is going to be either 7 or 8, depending on whether the yellow has been done or not. Always an even number refers to your main color stitches. Row 8, we're looking at the wrong side. You can tell because of this bottom. The accent color tails are in the back. They're behind all of this. You'll notice that they always stay on that side because the line keeps nice and straight. We're going to start with a chain 3. The chain 3 is not in front or behind anything. It's just on the side. There's nothing for it to be in front or behind of. The next stitch is right here, but it's going to be a back stitch. So we're going to go behind the yellow, but make sure that these tails aren't getting in the way. So we go here, we grab that spot. We want it to stay behind the yellow. Don't get these ones. Yarn over. Do a double crochet like normal. Chain space between each double crochet. The next 5 stitches are also in the back. The asterisk just sort of interrupts. You could write it as 6 in the back, but then you wouldn't know where to do your repeats. So that is why if you're doing a single repeat, the asterisks are just sort of annoying. Then we have 1 stitch in the front and 3 in the back. Then 1 stitch in the front, and that's where the asterisk is, so you can go ahead and keep going, start again. We are at the end, so we're going to put 1 in the back. And our end stitch goes on the side in that window. There it is. Row 9, we're using our accent color. It says chain 3 in back. You don't get to choose if you're in the front or the back. It's already been decided, so you'll have to take this apart if it's wrong. Our first stitch is also in the back, so we can either go in there and pull it all through the back like that with the window, or when you're doing a back stitch, you may choose to just use your fingers if that makes it feel more comfortable for you. That's our back stitch. Then that's where the asterisk is, so we had 1 back, then 1 back again. Then we have 2 in the front. We're making sure not to include any gray. This layer of mesh is all in front here. We don't need any gray getting in the way. Then we have 2 in the back, so we have to go through the window and bring everything to the back. That means our double crochet is behind that chain of the gray. And we have 2 of those stitches. Then we have 4 in the front. And if you look at, if this visual cue helps you, it's just all 4 of these. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And make sure it is in front of the gray, not getting any of the gray into it. Then we have 1 stitch in the back. That ends the asterisk section, so you can go ahead and repeat it if you need to. Our final stitch outside of the asterisk is in the back. So you can just pull this gray one down and out of the way and go in that final window. And now your stitch is in the back. That is what we have created. If you're looking at the right side, it looks like this. Now we've gone over brackets, asterisks, repeats, front stitches, back stitches. I'm going to keep crocheting and I'm going to see you when I get to one visual repeat. Okay, so I spent the last little while crocheting. I crocheted all the way up to row 44. This is how I do my stitch markers. I put it in the 20th window and then the 40th window, so now I know that was 40 to 4. And then 45 is completed as well. The next part of the pattern, it has a line and it says visually completed one repeat. And if you look at this, you can see that what we have on each, there's like opposite rows. You have this bobble and this long thing, and about halfway through the long thing is a bobble. This is the other part of the bobble, and the long thing, that's how the repeat goes. So the next section up here is gonna look the same. If you were to repeat this and at the end you look at it, you go, well, this is the repeating section. Visually, yes. When you write the written instructions though, you will notice you can't just go back to row 4 to keep going, because row 4, we were working from the wrong side and our count was 7 in the back, 1 in the front, 2 in the back, blah, blah, blah. And now that we're up here at row 46, we are looking at the right side. They're almost the same, but it's the opposite. You're starting at the end and going wrong side. This one, we're starting at the front and doing the right side. So I have written the entire repeat again, but of course everything is flipped. If you are done and you don't want to keep going, you can stop. You can stop anytime that you come to a wrong side section. So currently we're working on the right side and we're going to have to finish it here and then finish both the dark and the light color, the main color and the accent color. So we'll just crochet row 46. It is going to create visually the same thing that you had at row 4. However, everything is opposite. It starts at the end of the row and all the stitches are opposite stitches because we're going in the front. So instead of making you figure out what the opposite stitches are, I've written the entire pattern out opposite. So the accent color is in the front. We chain 3 and we have 1 in the front. We're ignoring those asterisks because I'm only doing 1 repeat. So we're just going to do 2 more in the front. Then we have 1 in the back. And 7 in the front. And of course we're ignoring the asterisks again, so our final outside of the asterisk stitch is 1 in the front and the end stitch right on the side. Then we have to do row 47. Our accent color is already in the front, so we are chaining 3 in the front. I think you can hear my cat whining. Usually I lock them up when I do videos and I forgot. 2 in the back. Two in the front. Then those brackets telling us to do 2 in the back, 1 in the front, twice. Then we have 1 stitch in the back and our end stitch is in the front. And now we are going to be working from the wrong side. Anytime you come to a wrong side section, so you see all the pattern is written with those sections, right? Anytime you come to a wrong side section, you could say, okay, I've had enough. I'm done. Row 48, which says wrong side accent color back, and you could crochet it as it's written. If you decide at any point you get to a wrong side and you say, actually, I'm done. That's as far as I want to go. Instead of doing wrong side accent color back, you must bring that accent color to the front. And then you crochet it as normal. So row 48, we're going to say wrong side accent color. It says accent color back. We're going to say, no, we're bringing it to the front. And then you follow the written instructions of that row. Chain 3, 1 in the back, then 6 more in the back. Then we have front, back, front, back. One more in the back and our end stitch on the side. And then we go right to the end of the pattern. We scroll, 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 or just look if you are on a printed paper. And it says that now, instead of doing the next row that would have been, we're going to do row 89. So the only thing we've changed is that we brought our accent color tails to the front. Then we finished that row. And then to finish off, our final accent color row is going to say everything just goes in the front. Doesn't matter where you are in the pattern. All you did was bring those tails to the front, and now your final row is in the front. 1, 2, 3, and then everything in the front. Yours might look different if you ended on a different row. Maybe your stitches are hiding behind or in front slightly differently because the previous row will be different. But all the stitches will be front stitches. That's how you can end it. And that final stitch is also still an end front, which feels weird, but it just goes in that final corner. And then you're done. You can cut this off. Normally, I would just pull it through here, snip it, and yank it all the way. I'm just going to cut them both at the same time because I don't have my scissors handy. Row 90 says chain 3 and then put everything in the back. So because you're going in the back windows, you make that line. If you wanted to repeat the sections even longer, you would repeat it a few more times. So this might not actually be row 90. Like for us, it's not, right? 42, 4, 6, 8. But we're following the instructions for row 90. That's how we finish it off. So what this has done is now locked your layers together and made this look the same as the beginning was. So we have main color, accent color, main color in 3 lines on the top and the bottom. That's the point of ending it like that. I mean, you could always just cut your yarn and be done with it, but that is what we are creating. Now, are we in the video? Oh, there we go. Now we can see the top and the bottom. They're the same then. They have dark, light. The ends match. That's what we've created. If you wanted to make it bigger, go ahead. But at any point, you can just change where you're putting your tails and finish off with row 89 and 90. There also is the optional single crochet border now. You don't have to do this part. All I do is go through the stitches in a way that locks them just a little bit more because I don't like the way they're flappy, but it is unnecessary. And in my first patterns, I didn't even bother with it. So take this with a grain of salt. What I do is just chain 1 to give me a little wiggle room. And I grab 1 loop of the yellow and I do a single crochet around the gray, and 1 loop of the yellow. And I'm just in each window, in each gray window, I'm putting 2 single crochets, and one of the single crochets happens to grab a random loop on the yellow. It does not entirely matter what random loop, as long as you are consistent. If things look the same, then they look on purpose. Because when I add my border, I simply grab one of these loops. And it holds things in place. I'm grabbing 1 loop and doing a single crochet into the window. 2 single crochets per window. One of the single crochets happens to grab some random yellow thing. Whatever you do, just be consistent. My yellow does stretch, so even though it looks like I've pulled it, by the time things stretch out again, it's relatively smooth. I like the way it looks. If you don't, do something else. I also don't need those stitch markers anymore, right? You just keep going. And that is how the pattern works. The wrong side looks like this. The right side looks like this. Maybe you made yours bigger. I hope you can show it off and be proud of what you've created. And I hope my video was helpful and not too confusing. I know I do sometimes babble and I get on sidetracks, but I do hope that it was helpful and you can let me know if it was. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe and click a little bell.